All right, now we're talking about September 29th, 1924. The Palestinian Arab Congress, 1924. October. Transpires August 29th. September 29th, 2 weeks later, the new British High Commissioner of British troops in Palestine, Sir John Chancellor, telegraphed to the Colonial Office, the latent, deep-seated hatred of the Arabs for the Jews has now come to the surface in all parts of the country. Threats of renewed attacks upon the Jews are being freely made and are only being prevented by visible presence of considerable military force. That same day, September 29th, the President of the Arab Executive in Palestine, Musa Kazim Pasha, warned a senior British officer in Palestine that unless the Jewish national home policy was changed, there would be an armed uprising. Musa Kazim Pasha added that such an uprising would involve not only the Arabs of Palestine, but participation of Muslims from Syria, Transjordan, and perhaps Iraq. March 1930, the Shaw report, head of the Commission of Enquiry to examine the causes of Arab unrest, as if they didn't know, made it clear that British opinion was swinging slowly but definitively against the Zionists, against the Jews. Based on a second party official, they were in charge. Based on a second official report by Sir John Hope-Simpson, October 1930, the British government issued a white paper intimating that future Jewish immigration might have to be curtailed even more vigorously than in the past. Following Wiseman's protest, Ramsay MacDonald agreed to abandon the immigration limiting clauses of the 1930 white paper. On 30 January 1933, Adolf Hitler became German Chancellor, and anti-Semitism took on an open, official, and hysterical tone. Hitler predicted with what he called absolute certainty, his name would be honored in all the lands as the man who once and for all exterminated the Jewish pest from the world. Wow, that seems like an obsession, you think? Why? The new German persecutions, combined with the continuing anti-Jewish feelings in Poland and Romania, did lead, however, to a great influx of Jews into Palestine. The Jewish population now stood at more than 230,000, nearly 20% of the total. Formidable in action, strong in restraint. 1933, 1937. Immediately following the Nazi victory in Germany, Arab protests against the Jewish immigration to Palestine were renewed. Hitler was instigating it. The Jews did not allow themselves to be intimidated or deterred, but began to augment the arms supplies which, since the riots of 1929, they had been building up for their own defense. In the resulting violence, the Arabs had decided to challenge both the British and the Jews. 1934, a further 42,000 Jews entered Palestine. 1935, more than 61,000. 2 years later, the Palestine Royal Commission, headed by the Lord Peel, commented, so far from reducing economic absorptive capacity, immigration increased it. The more immigrants came in, the more work they created for local industries to meet their needs, especially in building, and more work meant for more room for immigrants under the labor schedule. Unless, therefore, the government adopted a more restrictive policy, or unless there were some economic economic or financial setback, there seemed no reason why the rate of immigration would not go on climbing up and up. The Jews were caught in a dilemma. On the one hand, fearing a repetition of the Hebron, Safed, and Matzah massacres, they armed themselves and anxious to build a Jewish entity and to increase the possibilities for Jewish immigration, they employed only Jews in the major Zionist enterprises. On the other hand, desirous of improving relations with the Arabs, in the autumn of 1935, they added 50% to the land reserved for Arabs in the Hulch Basin, land allocated to a Jewish group by the administration. It was, above all, events in Germany which dominated Jewish thinking, making Palestine seem more than ever an essential focus of Jewish hopes. The British government still maintained its attitude that Palestine was not a suitable place for any substantial additional number of Jewish refugees. Notice that Israel is not focused on the Lord and the Promised Land, but on their own survival. They're focused on temporal things, and God is moving them in the direction of coming back to the Promised Land, which they did. 1948. But the Palestinian Arabs made it clear that they were bitterly opposed to the idea of Palestine being made a haven for any more European refugees whatsoever. They regarded even the existing number as too large, pointing out that since 1933 the Jewish population of Palestine had increased from 230,000 to 400,000, reaching by 1936 one-third of the total population of Palestine. In protest against any further Jewish immigration, the Arabs began a general strike on April 15, 1936. And on May 7th, the Arab leaders meeting in Jerusalem demanded an immediate end to all Jewish immigration, a ban on any further Jewish land purchase, and an Arab-majority government. Jewish farms were attacked all over Palestine. Jewish houses were burnt, shops looted, and whole orchards destroyed. Attacks on individual Jews led within a month to the deaths of 21 Jews, several of them women and children. That's their only answer. The British responded to this Arab violence. The Jewish Agency urged the Jews to exercise restraint, and while Jews continued to be killed throughout Palestine, no Jewish reprisals took place. British troops, however, killed more than 140 Arabs, and 33 British soldiers were killed. For the Jews, it was galling to see what little effect the British protection could have. On November 18th, at the British Royal Commission's to investigate the cause of unrest in Palestine first public session, Eric Mills informed the commissioners that on his estimate there were in mid-1936 940,000 Arab and 370,000 Jews living in Palestine, and that 134,000 of the Jews had arrived since Hitler had come to power in Germany 3.5 years before. November 24th, Louis Andrews, the acting director of the Department of Development for the Galilee District, told the commissioners that although he and his officials had made every effort to collect the evidence of the Arab charge that Arab farmers had been displaced by Jews, little evidence had been forthcoming. Wiseman gives the commission a summary of the history of Jewish persecution and occupation of Palestine. Wiseman went on to explain to the commissioners the appeal of Palestine. We are a stiff-necked people and a people of long memory, he said. We never forget. And he went on, whether it is our misfortune or whether it is our good fortune, we have never forgotten Palestine and this steadfastness which has preserved the Jew through the ages and through a career which is almost one long chain of inhuman suffering and is primarily due to some physiological or pathological attachment to Palestine. We have never forgotten it, and we have never given it up. We have survived the Babylonian destruction. We have survived the Roman destruction. The Jews put up a fairly severe fight and the Roman invasion, which destroyed half of the civilized world, did not destroy small Judea. And whenever they once got a chance, the slightest chance, once they returned, they created their literature, their colonies, towns, and communities. There they did that. And if the commission would take the trouble to study the post-Roman period of the Jews and the life of the Jews in Palestine, they would find that there was not a single century in the 19th centuries which have passed since the destruction of Palestine as a Jewish political entity, not one single century in which the Jews did not attempt to come back. On November 30th, the commission examined Moshe Chertok, head of the political department of the Jewish Agency. Chertok replied, you might call the whole process of settlement of Palestine a snowball process. Naturally, every wave of immigrants creates possibilities of salvation, not only for themselves, but those coming after them. There were cases where an Arab peasant takes on a Harani, illegal Arab immigrant, as a farmhand, leaving him in charge of the farm while he himself goes to a Jewish colony to be employed by a Jewish orange grower in view of the difference between the wage he gets from the Jewish orange grower and the wage paid to the Harani. Arabs gained by Jewish enterprise. They had found in the Jews an expanding and profitable market for their produce. They had learned from the Jews innumerable techniques of building and irrigation. Here you go. Partition of Palestine is proposed. December 26, Professor Copeland, one of the land's members of the Peel Commission, went to Rehovot to see Dr. Wiseman. Copeland had begun to see a means of reconciling Arab and Jewish aspirations. He believed that part of Palestine could be given to the Jews and part to the Arabs, a partition not only of land but of sovereignty. Copeland's historical research had convinced him that two peoples, each with a separate sense of national identity, could not live together as equal partners in a single state. In this way, a Jewish mini-state would come into being and the Balfour Doctrine be superseded and annulled. Churchill once more defends Palestine as a Jewish national home. On March 12th, Winston Churchill was called before the commissioners. In answer to a question from Lord Peel, he declared that the Jewish right to immigration ought not to be curtailed by the economic absorptive capacity of Palestine, and he spoke of the good faith of England to the Jews. The British government had certainly committed itself. Rumbold took up the questioning of Churchill. Was there not, he asked, harsh injustice to the Arabs if Palestine attracted too many Jews from outside? Churchill replied that even when the Jewish home will become all Palestine, and it eventually would, there was no injustice. Why, he asked, is there a harsh injustice done if people come in and make a livelihood for more and make the desert into palm groves and orange groves? Why is it injustice? Because there is more work and wealth for everybody. There is no injustice. The injustice is when those who live in the country leave it to be desert for thousands of years. The Arabs, Churchill said, had come in after the Jews. It was the great hordes of Islam who smashed Palestine up and left it a wasteland. You have seen the terraces on the hills which used to be cultivated. He told the commissioners, which under Arab rule have remained a desert. The Jewish hopes and Arab pressures, 1937. The Peel Commission reported on partition is presented. Even before the Peel Commissioners had reached any final conclusion, the pressures from Arab governments and Muslim leaders outside of Palestine became acute. As Weizmann and himself had feared, within the Foreign Office, opinion had hardened against the Jews. Why? During April, the government prepared to announce the decision of the Peel Commission for the establishment of two separate states in Palestine, one Jewish, the other Arab. And with Jerusalem and a corridor to the coast excluded from both, the Arabs outside Palestine quickly made their opposition felt towards any form of partition or mini-state for the Jews. They didn't want the Jews to have anything. The Peel Commission report was presented June 25th. The Jews were likely to turn every political stone over to undermine the report, but unlikely to use force. The Peel Commission report was debated in the British Parliament July 21. July 30, William Ormsby Gore explained the change in British policy to the Permanent Mandates Commission of the League of Nations at Geneva. Gore stressed the extent to which the Jewish fate in Palestine was now bound up, in Britain's view, with the attitude not of the Arabs of Palestine alone, but of the whole Arab world, and indeed of the Muslim world as well. Wow, what do they have to do with it? Let them live? No. The revisionist leader, Vladimir Jabotinsky, pointed out that such a Jewish state would be destined to be eventually captured by the neighboring Arab states, the conquest being probably accompanied by destruction and massacre. So let's just stop it. The Arabs in Palestine did not regard themselves as Palestinians, but as part of Syria as a whole, as part of the Arab world. Ormsby Gore argued that Arabs in Palestine had not hitherto regarded themselves as Palestinians, but as part of Syria as a whole, as part of the Arab world. They could, Ormsby proposed, as part of the Peel Commission, part of a plan of partition, therefore be transferred out of many allocated areas to a Jewish sovereign state. They would, Ormsby Gore declared, be going only a comparatively few miles away to a people with the same languages, the same civilization, the same religion. Britain faced the entire world of Arab and Muslim nations, ray her Palestinian policy. September. Damascus, 400 Arabs representing all the Arab states as well as Palestine itself resolved that Palestine was an integral party of the Arabian homeland and insisted that Britain had to choose between our friendship and the Jews. By the end of the year, violence had broken out again. Britain keeps backing up and backing up. Why don't they just stand firm and say, forget you, we're making a stand here. Balfour Doctrine, we're done. Winston Churchill, we're done. British troops began an intensive military campaign against Arab terrorists. The stage was clearly set for a radical change in British policy for the beginning of the end of the plan of partition. Terrorism works. Neither the continuing flow of refugees from the persecutions in Germany nor the reviving anti-Semitism in Poland, affecting as it did more than 3 million Jews, could weigh against the threats and pressures of the Arab world. On October 27, it's a B, in a Foreign Office memorandum entitled Palestine, Immediate Problems, Rendell gave the reasons for a new policy. Firstly, he wrote, bands of Arabs from neighboring countries are waiting to take the first opportunity to cross into Palestine to assist in the guerrilla warfare which is being proposed against the mandatory powers. They were doing it Well, they were doing so because they regarded